Guys, try and get real gravity into this training session. It is a really tough session. It's based on triathlon fitness, and you need to make sure that the members know that. They know that they're doing something completely unique, completely different as far as all the other groups out there who take this type of training. Reassert the fact that you know everyone's name. Be positive to every individual. If you can, get behind them, talk to them. Make sure you're testing the fastest and caring for the slowest or weakest member. So one element warm-up. We're looking for consistency and continuity through every session. So we're trying to get the same warm-up at every location, at every session. And this gives the members an opportunity to learn the warm-up, to do it each week, to get to know each other, and they get 5 or 10 minutes to talk to each other before we then move into the dynamic session. So the layout of the warm-up is 12 steps wide, 30 steps long. And every 5 steps I put down a cone. So then the actual warm-up, we do a very simple run, a dynamic stretch and an isometric stretch. So we jog through the grid and then round the edge and back in at 50%. Then you go through a dynamic stretch. So for example, a side squat where you're going sideways, deep squat, a couple of steps, squat again. Then you come back in, and then we do a hamstring stretch, which is the isometric one. So just bouncing into a hamstring and maybe accelerating off. And then the other leg, and so on. Then we come back in. So you've done your run, you've done your dynamic stretch, you've done your isometric. When you get back in, we then go back into a run, but we build it from 50% sprint to a 60% sprint. Round the edge, jog gently in. When you get in, a new dynamic stretch. So this one could be facing sideways, twisting, bouncing. And then we come back in, a new isometric stretch. So this one might be a quad stretch followed by a small acceleration and then the other leg. Then you come back in, you go back into your run. So you're now 80%, so beg your pardon, 70% sprint. We need a dynamic exercise. So maybe a walking lunge with a stretch. So first off, just stretching the hips each side, and then maybe you go into a lunge with a twist. So lunging and rotating. And then further forward, you're going lunge and lift. Back in, another isometric exercise. So this time you might do, not entirely isometric, but maybe a high kick. So just stretching the hamstrings off and kicking back to get the hip flexors, and so on. Around the edge, back in, we're now into 80%. See, 80% sprint through, new dynamic stretch. This time maybe side squats the other way, or twisting the other way, or changing directions. Back in, new isometric exercise. So this is high knee over a hurdle, for example. A couple of steps other leg. So just trying, not necessarily isometric, but just taking it a bit more gently. Come back in, 90% sprint. Back in. This time another dynamic stretch. So this time maybe changing direction. So I'm explosive one way, explosive the other. Trying to really get the energy up for the group now. Trying to maybe push them so they can't talk quite so much. Back in, another isometric exercise. This one could be, again, actually we'll go back into a sprint. So build the sprint up to 100% sprints here, and then finish with the last rotational exercise, and so on. So you really need to get the whole body working, building in intensity, 3 or 4 sprints at the end. This whole warm-up should last about 12 minutes every single time. Then we come off, we circle the group up, we dynamic exercise, so just rotating the hips and twisting the upper body, getting low. And as you're doing that, you then come up and ask everyone to go around their names, so shouting their names out, so even the new people get to know each other. And then we go into a very brief description of this week's session, and I'll be explaining each of those coming forward. The Prem session is an absolute pure fitness test or fitness session. This is designed and developed by top triathletes to deliver consistency, and that is all that fitness is. It's about consistency, and this is our opportunity to replicate that. We're going to be working hard and fast for the first few sets, and then I want you to consistently hit that distance over the next few sets. As groups, as individuals, we're going to be motivating each other. So if you get a chance to talk to someone else, build them up, do that. So this is the Prem set. This is, I think, one of the best cardiovascular sort of endurance, speed endurance sets we've got. It very much is drawn from a triathlon training program, and it's great for consistency. What I'm going to ask these guys to do is on go. I've set up my Prem session, so I run 50 meters straight around the D, along the straight, around the D. Now, that's 150 meters. If these guys are working quickly, they'll do 1 lap in 30 seconds. I'm looking for these guys to try and do 2 laps in 1 minute. If I've got a big group, I've split them into 2 lines. So one line or one group will be inside the circuit, just motivating the group as they come round. The other group will be here lined up. Okay, we'll just do 1 minute's work, guys, trying to do 2 laps if you physically can. I know it's a big ask after today. Okay, ready, guys? On the line, go! So they're not working at a sprint, they're working at a lactic threshold push as fast as they physically can. Trying to drive, get that pace and power. You're getting the other group to talk them through this, trying to get them to motivate them round the corner. They work for a full minute, running as hard as they can, doing the whole lap. As they come in with about 5 seconds to go, bear in mind we're only at about 30 seconds here, I'm going to stop you guys there. I'm going to stop. That's brilliant. 30 seconds exactly. They've done half of what they should have done. And on 1 minute, I'll get the other group out and get them to do the lap. It's a sensationally good strength set. Each person has to do 8 reps of 1 minute on, 1 minute off. You need to motivate those weaker people. You need to talk to them and make them feel like they're doing well. Okay? So number 7, repetitive push. This is a really, really tough exercise. You need to be kind to the members, you need to talk them up, you need to get the other members, their partners, really motivating them and telling them how well they're doing. It's the push, so with this, George is the one who's going to be pushed, and the pusher is going to be Danny, the person at the back. I'm going to ask George to turn around so his back's facing Danny, because I don't want, if they're facing each other, you can start to get quite a lot of wear on the calves. So Danny comes hands to shoulders, and he's going to, not quite yet, but he's going to push him to the end of the warm-up grid, which is the 25 or 30 meter cone. When he hits that cone, Danny's going to accelerate around the whole of the circuit, all the way back to here. When he gets back here, he's going to do it again. George, on the other hand, the guy at the front, he's just going to be screaming at Danny, telling him how well he's doing, but walking back to here, so when Danny gets back, he's ready to go again. It's really tough. This is partly triathlon, this is partly rugby fitness. It's really, really effective. Okay, so Danny, just going to demonstrate 1 on the line, go! Pushing, pushing. Now, if you've got a big line of people, you want to try and get them lined up equally. So on the first set, you're going to get some people who are stronger, some people who aren't quite so strong. But when you get them into the second rep, it's good, George. So you just jog back in, George. George, just jog it back in so you're back here, but talking him up. So when you get back in for the second set, you'll have probably people coming in at different times, and you'll say to George and everyone else, I just want you to be a straight line when you get to the end next time, so maybe put a bit more pressure on, or a little less pressure. So now Danny would go in again, and he would do that 3 times, and it's important it is 3 times, unless they're really exhausted. So we've come to the end of the session. We're looking to do a cool down or a stretch. A cool down, you might want to do a reverse shuttle run, so you go 100% to the longest cone and then decrease in energy as you come down. Then we're hit about 55 minutes of the session. We've got a 5-minute stretch. Frankly, it doesn't have to be that good. You can explain to the members while you're stretching that actually isometric stretches are best done when their muscles are cold. I tend to just do, particularly in the winter when the ground's wet and cold, I do a quick salutation to the sun, or slow salutation to the sun, with a few extra stretches pushed in. You can do any stretch you like, but it needn't be more than about 5 minutes. As I'm going through it, I'll go through it now, but as I'm going through it, I also talk to the members about events coming up, and about various things that have been good about the session, that sort of thing. So I tend to ask them to legs wide, roll forward, forehead touches the grass. Obviously you can't get anywhere near the grass, especially if you're as inflexible as I am. Then hands hit the ground, feet go back, hips go high, chin goes low. Stretch that and hold that for longer than I'm going to do it, but not too long. Then hips go high, chin high. That's good. Then I go hips high again and just walk it back until I'm hanging again between the legs. Then I look to go wide and stretching the adductor out. And if you can push them low on that one, even better. If they're struggling with this, on one knee, leg out to the side. Then I come into the middle and the other side. All the time I'm talking to them about events coming up, what's going on at training, who's done particularly well during the session. And maybe I'll do a glute stretch as well, so bring the knee across to one hand and just drop into a glute stretch. Then the other leg, and so on. After I've done both of those, I might look into an adductor stretch, so into a one kneeling side, push the hip forward, kneeling side, hand high, and rotate away from that back leg. And again, holding for 30 seconds or so. While I'm in this position, I might go into a hamstring stretch. So that's pretty much it. Maybe finishing with a quad stretch. And I always end the sessions with getting the members as a whole group to face the sun, put their hands on the back of the head, shut the eyes, 3 or 4 long, slow, mindful breaths, just trying to bring them back into the moment, trying to take the energy, the heart rate down a bit. And then we stop, if we can get them to clap, and then head home. So hopefully it's feeling really positive at the end of the session.